Hello there, and welcome back to episode number 53 of Inside the Vault. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, Carolina Panthers podcast. My guest today is a writer for Pro Football Focus. You hear him on a lot of different platforms. But recently, he was on the Rich Eisen show with Kirk Morrison filling in when Rich was coming back from Germany. But he is Max Chadwick. Max, how's it going?
I'm good, Brian. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. And I apologize. College football analyst for PFF. I know you probably write too. You do probably a lot of different things there.
No,
But
I do. Yeah, no, you're
yeah, yeah,
totally right. Yeah, no
yeah, yeah,
worries.
yeah. Well, you were on Rich Eisen's show. I'll get right into it. You discussed Bryce Young. You discussed his improvement since being benched earlier this season, and then the win over the New York Giants in Munich that just happened a short dates time ago. So, for our listeners who, are you a Bryce Young truther? Are you kind of on the fence about Bryce Young? What is? Let's just. I'll give you a two-part question. Number one, what was kind of your initial thoughts on him coming out? And then number two, kind of fast forward to now, do you feel like he can still be the Carolina Panthers quarterback for the future, or do you need to see more for that to kind of happen?
Yeah, I loved him coming out. I thought he was, to me, the clear-cut number one quarterback in the draft, and obviously it doesn't look great now with how good CJ Stroud is. But I
Right.
really did love Bryce Young. Just the processing ability was out of this world. I just thought he saw the game at such an amazingly high level. And then get to the NFL, and unfortunately for him, I felt like his confidence was shattered in his first couple of years. And I think, for a guy who's not doesn't have the physical tools to overcompensate with that. He's a guy that if your confidence gets shattered and you're a guy who's supposed to see the game at a very high level, now all of a sudden you're not, all of a sudden you're doubting yourself, right? Now you're saying, okay, am I actually seeing this or what? So then that's a bad part to him that like, hey, if your confidence is not there, he's not going to be good because really that
Right.
kind of goes into what makes him such a good player. So I think the benching, helped him in that, he came back and against New Orleans and against the Giants,
Yep.
he probably has two best games of the entire season, honestly. So I think obviously the Saints and Giants have had kind of rough goes of it lately, but I still need to see more. I'm not willing to say, oh, he's going to be the franchise quarterback. Oh yeah, these two games against bad opponents show us that he will
Right.
be the guy for them.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm not writing him off either. I think there are a lot of people that were writing him off for the first couple weeks of the season. I'm not willing to do that either. I think that the next whatever 8 weeks that we have in the NFL season will be huge for him. And if he reverts back against some better opponents to the Bryce Young that we saw in the first couple weeks of the season and pretty much all of last year as well, then maybe you go into the draft and take a quarterback there. But if he plays like this the rest of the year, I think he's worth at least trotting him out there for year three in Carolina.
Yeah. Well, personally, so I obviously do this podcast not on the Panthers specifically for them, but I do it specifically on the team specifically. A lot of us in Carolina are thinking, well, if only they knew the defense with Jero Vero. He's getting a lot of head coaching jobs, interviews last year, first, second round interviews, even finalists in some positions. And they lost Derek Brown, they lost Shaq Thompson. They got a lot of these pieces back against the Giants, except for Shaq and Derek Brown, who are out for the year. And it's like they suddenly look a lot better with DJ Wanham, who's now finally been able to play. And it's like, where has this Panthers team been the entire season? And it just seems like there's a little bit of a fresh energy in life. And that Bama Bryce, in my opinion, we saw that Bama Bryce for the first time against the New York Giants. We didn't really see that at all last year, the Green Bay game. Some people said there was maybe moments, but we finally saw Bama Bryce against the New York Giants. And I think that is here to stay. At least we hope here in the Carolinas for sure. But specifically regarding the Panthers in general, what do you like from Dave Canales? What have you noticed from him? Time with Tampa Bay with Baker, Geno Smith in Seattle. What do you think of his long-term prospects as a head coach? Because yes, Carolina not the best situation. We all know that, but he's a play caller who's learning on the job. He's only did it 1 year last year, but he's someone who's learning with Bryce. And even though he didn't draft Bryce, I think he's given Bryce every opportunity to be that franchise guy moving forward. And yes, I think his plays calling's got to improve, but all in all, I think we've got something here in Carolina. There's hope to look forward to for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a guy that, did really well in Tampa Bay, turning around Baker Mayfield, honestly, and helped Geno Smith turn his career around as well, like you said. So yeah, I think there's definitely something there with Dave Canales. And I think, again, a big part of him is that he did not draft Bryce Young. So if this whole
Right.
Bryce Young thing does not work out, he has earned the right to go into a draft and take his quarterback, right? So that's a big thing as well for him is that like, hey, if this doesn't go well for the next couple of years, he at least has earned the right, in my opinion, to draft a quarterback and then see what happens from there. So I think that's key to remembering with him is that he inherited Bryce Young. He didn't draft Bryce Young. But I think there is stuff to like with him. Obviously, they haven't had a great season, and I'm not trying to take away too much from the Saints and the Giants games because those are two franchises that are also really, really struggling right now.
Yep.
But we'll see how the rest of the year. Again, this is another thing too. Like the whole Bryce Young thing. It's too early to make a call on Dave Canales, in my opinion, either. I'm kind of curious to see how the rest of the year goes.
Well, I know the Carolina Panthers are not exactly a model franchise that people are talking about on a daily basis, but in your opinion, since had you on specifically because of your Bryce Young takes there on the Rich Eisen show earlier this week, what do you feel like we're not the national media as a whole when it comes to the Panthers? I realize they're not going to be talked about all the time, but is there something that's being overlooked by the national media, maybe not talked about enough when it comes to the Panthers? For instance, let me say this: Panthers are on a bye this week. They come back and play Kansas City at home. That's a step up, like you said, in competition. If the Chiefs are undefeated at that point, if the Panthers were to pull out a shocking victory, the media is gonna be like, well, Chiefs do this every year. They lose one, they're gonna lay a stinker. But if Bryce Young goes out there and balls and does his thing against Patrick Mahomes, people have got to talk about
Yeah, definitely. I think, one thing I've been really impressed by in Carolina, and there hasn't been too much to really write home about, but one of the things I really like the offensive line this year. I think the offensive line
Talk
last
about
year, you can make the argument that, Bryce was put in a really bad situation coaching wise. The receiving core was not nearly as good as it should have been. And the offensive line was really bad last year, too.
yeah,
This year, the thing you could say, too, is that, hey, the offensive line's been really good, right? So it hasn't been a problem, I think, for them this year like it was last year. I think they're right now 11th in pass blocking grade this year, and they're ninth in run blocking grade. So by all accounts, they're well above average in both pass blocking and run blocking this year. So yeah, that's one thing that I think has been probably the best part of the whole Carolina Panthers organization this year is that the offensive line is kind of night and day compared to what it was last year.
yeah. And I think the thing that the Panther fans are, and really the whole country is seeing now is Dan Morgan, new general manager, former Carolina Panthers linebacker, is rewarding guys who are staying home in the Carolinas for their long-term play and being a dog that he wants on this roster. Chuba Hubbard just signed an extension. You like people are well with Jonathan Brooks. Why would they do that? Well, David Montgomery, Jamar Gibbs, and Detroit, same kind of deal. Like they have up there, like the Panthers had back in the day with Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams, that two-back monster. He never hurts to have more than one running back. Derek Brown, a stud who just signed his extension this offseason. Unfortunately, he went down with the injury week one. And then J.C. Horn is someone who I think personally is a top 10 corner in this league when healthy, which this year he's proving to be healthy, someone who the Panthers can build around, a lot of building pieces there. So all that's to say is this team is on the rise, but at the same time, like you said, you got to prove it a year in and year out in this league. But going back to what I was trying to say with that is the Panthers are finally not letting guys like DJ Moore go out the door, Brian Burns go out the door, Christian McCaffrey go out the door, and finally getting some of this homegrown talent to stay. And I think that's going to help the culture that David Canales is trying to build and ultimately hit on some more draft picks in the next this coming up year's draft. And then the Panthers might Max, be someone like an Arizona Cardinals. We're sneaking up on some folks this year with that younger quarterback, smaller quarterback too, with Kyler Murray kind of doing his thing there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the draft's key for them. They're obviously gonna have a lot of money to spend as well, so that'd be good for them. But this is not a franchise that's close to winning now, in my opinion. So the window for them is way far in the future. So I think that the draft is going to be absolutely critical for them for Dan Morgan and Dave Canales to nail, honestly, because you got to get a young core in this team to build around. You can't just rely on aging veterans to help your roster. Now you can use them obviously because you need leadership in a locker room, but I think this is a franchise that desperately needs to just nail a lot of picks in the NFL draft, a lot of premium picks as well. Just get talent in that locker room right now, and I think that's really critical. I think this is not a team that, obviously you want to see good things, the rest of the season this year, but this is not a 2024 team, honestly, right now. I mean, you're hoping they can improve in 2025, and then honestly 2026 and 2027 and beyond is really when you're hoping that this team can maybe start pushing for the playoffs. But yeah, this is a team that definitely needs to nail a lot of their draft picks in the next couple of years.
Well, before I let you go, hope to have you back on in the future for a longer episode. We can kind of talk a little bit more regarding Panthers in a more of a extended episode. But where can people find your work there at PFF and all the good work you do?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. You can find it all at pff.com, and I also host the PFF College Football Show, which you can find on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast too.
Awesome. Well, as I said at the top, my guest today here on this quick preview episode of Inside the Vault is Max Chadwick over at PFF. Does good work there. Go follow him there. And Max, all the best, man. Thanks for coming on. We'll talk to you down the road, and we'll hopefully have you back on again.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you, man.
All right. That'll wrap up this episode number 53 of Inside the Vault, a Carolina Panthers podcast. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and we will see you next time.